Believe it or not, I did not want to be an educator. I did not want to work with kids. I did not want to be around kids. I did not want anything to do with kids. Growing up, I would always watch my cousins, and they were enough to let me know that I did not want to work with kids. During undergraduate, I wanted to be an attorney. I was going to be a civil rights lawyer. I was going to different schools here in the state of North Carolina. I was studying for the law school admissions test. That was my goal. It was not going to change. It was not going to waver. My whole purpose was to advocate for those who cannot advocate for themselves, to be a voice for the voiceless, and to provide support for minoritized communities. My mother has been a childhood educator for about 2 decades now. She has worked in various areas of childhood, spanning from 4s and 5s to infants, to toddlers, to after school. So one day during undergraduate, I visited her at her employment. So as I'm walking back to the after school room, I hear some children ask, "Miss Nance, is that your son?" And she responded with a resounding yes. I was greeted with hugs, smiles, and great conversations. From that moment on, I knew that I wanted to be an educator. I first got my first teaching assistant position at an elementary school, then worked in secondary, then eventually became a dean of students and an assistant principal. And now in my current role as the division chair of education at Clayton College. Throughout my tenure, I noticed some discrepancies within our educational system, where students are being schooled and not educated. Schooling for me is a prescribed method that is archaic, that is a singular approach when teaching our students. Teachers who are not culturally relevant or culturally responsive tend to try to understand the symptoms but not diagnose the problem. Post-realism exists to deposit a cultural and relevant comprehension and expression of social conditions that delineates the experiences and social critiques that are inevitable in school climate. So when thinking about this framework, my colleague and I developed a post-realism framework. It's IDEA, stands for Identity, Discover, Elevate, and Advocate. Identity. As educators, we must understand the root causes of oppression. A child who may come to my classroom, they may be in foster care, they may come from a single-parent household, they may be latchkey. After my child leaves my classroom around 3:30 or 4 o'clock, I do not know how they are being oppressed or what is oppressing them. So it's my job as an educator to be able to understand my student, to get to know my students. Discover. It is important for students to discover their social stratifications in our society. Karl Marx was a functional theorist who came up with social stratifications. He said, okay, how are we being classified? Are we being classified based on our income? Are we being classified based on zoning? Or are we being classified based on our schooling? And knowing this, it is very important to know that stratifications impede on students' educational attainment and educational outcome. As teachers, it is very important for us to understand the stratifications of our students so we better know how to serve them in the future. It is also important to elevate their critical consciousness. We are now in a global society, 21st century learners. I can no longer teach one way. As for that, it's not relevant for all my students. One of my students is auditory, one may be visual. If one may be visual, I may need to pour small group instruction to make sure this child is understanding the material that is being taught. Not just teaching to a prescribed method, not going back to schooling, and now educating. Lastly in this framework is advocate. We must advocate for our students. We must show them that it's okay to speak up and speak out and to use your voice. Huey Newton and Bobby Seale of the Black Panther Party opened the Huey Institute in 1966. Later, it was renamed to the Oakland Community School in 1975 because of the exponential growth. They wanted to open up the school to provide representation of cultural and historical figures and celebrate these cultural and historical figures that was not taught in predominantly white schools. The goal of this school was to educate, to liberate. Jeffrey Kennedy is the past president of the Harlem Churches Zone in Harlem, New York. He started the school roughly in about 1992. He devised a 10-year strategic plan in building the Harlem Churches Zone. His focus in building the school was to provide students with culturally responsive and culturally relevant teaching. Now, here's the thing that's interesting about Jeffrey Kennedy that makes the Harlem Churches Zone what it is today. He didn't just say, okay, I'm going to school these children, but I'm going to educate them. How? Well, he understood in order for our students to be successful, we need to get to the root cause of the issue. It's easy for students to get on the bus and go to school, especially if they don't have food at home, if they don't have proper places to sleep, parents don't have childcare. So what Kennedy did, he infused the entire community around building the Harlem Churches Zone model. He said that not only does parents need to be educated, our students need to be educated. Not only does students need to be educated, the community and the stakeholders need to also be educated as well. He implemented something called the baby college. As a parent, you go in and get material and resources for students and helping them be successful long term. So not only did he stop there, he said, you know what, I'm going to monitor your progress throughout college as well, which is what he did. Till this day, the Harlem Churches Zone has a 95% graduation rate because of the model that was implemented and continued to be implemented at the Harlem Churches Zone. Although Canada did not understand, or post-realism did not exist around Kennedy's time, he was operating in a post-realistic structure. He said, for these students to be successful, I need to know their home environment, I need to know where they come from, I need to know their cultural upbringing, I need to know anything and everything about not only the student, but the family and their upbringings as well. He understood social stratifications. He understood that curriculum needed to be culturally responsive and culturally relevant in order for students to be successful. He understood that learning needed to be divisive. It can't just be one singular notion, but a multifaceted process and engage in different types of students, especially those who are linguistically challenged. The future implications of post-realism is going back to teaching culturally relevant and culturally responsive. Not every student learns the same way. So we have to make sure that our learning is different when it comes to different students. If I teach my students the same way, then I wonder why I'm not growing as a teacher. I wonder why my data is still staying the same, because students are not learning the material that you are teaching them. Secondly, we must focus on the whole child. Edith Ackerman was a Swiss-born American psychologist who explored the interactions with developmental psychology, play, learning, and design. She said that we need to focus on the whole child. In order for students to grow, this is what we should focus on. But it's not only focus on it, how do we do it? That's the question. How do we focus on the whole child? I'm in professional learning communities. I don't get off of work till about 4:30, 5 o'clock. I'm tired, I'm gonna be stuck in traffic on the way home. Maybe instead of me trying to rush to get home, let me go to that kid's basketball game, or let me go to their football game, because I know when they get home, they might not have the representation they needed in order for the child to be successful. We can implement the IDA approach in creating safe spaces for our students. A lot of times, what I know for me as a former teacher, we taught towards the curriculum and the state standards. You gotta be on pace and guide at this point in order for students to reach their goal. The MAP testing is coming up, so we cannot deviate from the lesson. when in fact, I think that's what we need to do for our students. I had a student in second grade, and he always came in my classroom tired. Every day, he put his head on his desk. Did not do the morning work, did not comply with anything I asked him to do, and I let him. I let him sleep, because obviously he's tired, right? And so then one day I had a conversation with him. I'm like, man, why are you always sleeping in class? Couldn't find out his mom just gave birth to a baby boy, and that he had to watch his baby brother that just was born, while the mom was out doing other things. So he was put into an adult position at a very young age. So his thought processes was different from my other second graders. So I would not have known that if I would not have created that safe space for this kid. Lastly, we can use post-realism to help social stratifications within our society. It is very important that our students know that they are loved, valued, and safe. I can no longer hide information that is not relevant to their socioeconomic statuses or to their experiences. So if I, as an educator, are teaching my students, then I have to teach them about the societal pressures that continue to exist in this country. I have to help them understand their nature so they can go out and be critical thinkers in a global society. Lastly, I'll leave you with this. W.B. Du Bois was a 20th century philosopher. He said that students learn from what you are, not what you teach. Thank you.